when Kai Zhao's voice, carrying a hint of mockery and a cold chill, echoed through the sky, the entire world suddenly fell silent. Countless powerful figures were left dumbfounded. The Kai Zhao before them was the daughter of the Inferno Empire, the ruler of the boundless fire domain. Gulps echoed as countless experts couldn't help but swallow, their eyes wide with shock. The boundless fire domain was a true giant in the vast world. Not only in the northern domain but throughout the entire Tianluo continent, few forces dared to provoke such an existence. Moreover, the founder of the boundless fire domain, the Flame Emperor, was a true titan in the grand world. While the domain was somewhat new compared to other superpowers, it was well known that when it came to the most formidable forces in the world, the boundless fire domain ranked at the very top. Most of this reputation stemmed from the fearsome name of the Flame Emperor. Even among the heavenly supremes, who were renowned across the grand world, the Flame Emperor stood out as one of the finest. So, when the crowd heard that Kai Zhao's father was none other than the legendary Flame Emperor, they were stunned. Immediately, their gazes turned to the venomous snake sovereign, who now wore a grim expression. The venomous snake sovereign was already a powerful overlord in the northern domain, a figure of Earth's supreme strength who stood tall in the eyes of countless experts. But compared to the legendary Flame Emperor, he was nothing more than a firefly against the moon. Thus, many of those gazes turned sympathetic. It seemed they felt sorry for the venomous snake sovereign, who had simply wandered out and unwittingly brought trouble upon himself by offending the daughter of the Flame Emperor. If he truly angered the boundless fire domain, the Serpent God Temple would likely be reduced to ashes. Under the weight of those sympathetic stares, the venomous snake sovereign's already pale face turned ghostly white. His expression stiffened as he stared at the flame sigil above Kai Zhao's head. A sense of dread prickled his scalp, for only those at his level could truly understand what a heavenly supreme represented. It was the pinnacle of power. Kai Zhao's icy gaze fixed on the venomous snake sovereign as she sneered. It seemed like you were very interested in me earlier. If you think it's necessary, I can have my father come and speak with you. The venomous snake sovereign shuddered. A forced smile appeared on his stiff face as he quickly said, "Earlier, I was reckless. I had no intention of offending the imperial daughter." His voice, once full of killing intent, now had no trace of malice. His posture was low, clearly intimidated by Kai Zhao's background. After all, his strength, even among the northern domain's giants, was not top tier. And compared to the mighty boundless fire domain, he was nothing. "You won't take revenge for the loss of your tail?" Kai Zhao asked indifferently. The venomous snake sovereign forced a dry laugh. Of course, he was angry, but what good would it do? Could he really kill Kai Zhao? With so many people around, if word got out, he'd be hunted by the boundless fire domain with nowhere to run. I was simply outclassed. Farewell. The venomous snake sovereign had lost all face today, and he had no intention of staying any longer. Moreover, he truly feared provoking Kai Zhao further. If she really brought the Flame Emperor here, even though the boundless fire domain and the northern domain were vast distances apart, the Flame Emperor could still sense the disturbance and come through space via projection. With a deep breath, the venomous snake sovereign turned and, dragging his half-destroyed body, broke through space and vanished, his departure tinged with a sense of panic and disgrace. At that moment, any grudges, like that with Qi Shui, seemed irrelevant. Even if Qi Shui survived, the venomous snake sovereign probably wanted to slap him dead for causing such trouble. Leaving him alive would only invite further disaster. Countless experts stared, mouths agape, at the venomous snake sovereign's hasty departure, unable to comprehend that even a powerful Earth Supreme could be reduced to such a state. The boundless fire domain is terrifying. The Flame Emperor is terrifying. Mu Chen also watched this scene in shock. His face turned solemn. The Flame Emperor is indeed an extraordinary figure. Even Mandala nodded slightly. Despite her pride, she had to admit the exceptional talent of the Flame Emperor. Even in this vast world, full of great heroes, the Flame Emperor's name continued to resound. On the other side of the sky, Lu Tiandao watched this scene with a rather dark expression. Originally, he had hoped to team up with the venomous snake sovereign to force Mandala into handing over the person. But who would have thought that suddenly a daughter of the Flame Emperor appeared and directly forced the venomous snake's sovereign to flee in disgrace. This situation had left him in an awkward position. Lu Tiandao, it seems your helper was of no use. Mandala then glanced at Lu Tiandao, her youthful voice laced with mockery. Lu Tiandao's face darkened, especially when he saw Kai Xiao also casting a cold gaze at him. His lips involuntarily twitched. Judging by the current situation, it seemed that the daughter of the Flame Emperor and Mu Chun had a close relationship. If he made a move now, complications would likely arise. Although the power of their Xiantian Palace was stronger than that of the Serpent God Palace, and his own strength exceeded that of the venomous snake sovereign, when compared to the colossal force of the boundless fire domain, there was clearly no comparison. Thus, this situation had left Lu Tiandao in a difficult position. Great Luo Domain Master, don't get too smug. I heard that in this Dragon Phoenix Heaven, you offended all the right people. It seems that the Netherworld Palace and Divine Hall won't let this go. Once the Grand Hunting War begins, your great Luo domain may be eradicated, Lu Tiandao said with a cold sneer, looking at Mandala. If they really think my great Luo domain is a soft target, then they can come and try, Mandala replied, her small face cold. But even if my great Luo domain is destroyed, I'll be sure to drag your Xiantian Palace down with us. Is that so? Lu Tiandao countered with a cold laugh, then waved his sleeve and said, well, I'm curious to see whether your great Luo domain can survive the Grand Hunting War. Having said this, Lu Tiandao knew he couldn't act any further. He cast one last sharp look at Mu Chun, whose skin tingled under the coldness in Lu Tiandao's eyes. However, Mu Chun remained calm in the face of Lu Tiandao's murderous gaze. Seeing this, Lu Tiandao merely snorted coldly, his figure flickering as the space twisted, and he vanished. With Lu Tiandao's departure, the suffocating spiritual pressure that had weighed heavily on the area completely dissipated. Countless strong figures finally exhaled in relief. Mandala lifted her small face and looked at the place where Lu Tiandao had disappeared. Her brows furrowed slightly. Could there be trouble? Mu Chun walked closer to Mandala and asked softly. Although Lu Tiandao's words couldn't be fully trusted, Mu Chun could vaguely sense the cruelty of the Grand Hunting War. Under such fierce competition, even top forces like the Great Luo Domain might not be spared from destruction. The competition at that level is not something the conflicts within Dragon Phoenix Heaven can change. Mandala shook her head, her words implying that no matter the outcome of the conflicts in Dragon Phoenix Heaven, they wouldn't have a major impact on the Grand Hunting War. However, will it cause trouble? Naturally, there will be some. After all, in every Grand Hunting War, some top forces are annexed and erased, Mandala said with a faint smile, a chilling glint in her large eyes. But my great Luo domain will not be the lamb to the slaughter. If anyone wants a bite, they must be ready to be bitten back. Mu Chun could only nod. He was gradually beginning to feel the cruelty of this vast world. Even a force as strong as the Great Luo Domain had to face many who were watching them closely. In another part of the sky, Kai Xiao also floated over. She gave Mandala a slight smile, showing respect, and Mandala nodded back. To this daughter of the Flame Emperor, Mandala, who usually remained indifferent to others, showed a bit of courtesy. I should be leaving soon, Kai Xiao said, her beautiful eyes looking at Mu Chun. She smiled and extended her jade hand. It was a pleasure working with you. Kai Xiao, after all, was not from the Northern Domain, so Mu Chun wasn't surprised by her departure. After these days of interaction, he had a good impression of her and was happy to make such a friend. It was a pleasure working with you, and thank you so much for your help, Mu Chun replied. Kai Xiao had helped him a lot in Dragon Phoenix Heaven and had even stepped in to resolve his previous predicaments, so Mu Chun was genuinely grateful. Kai Xiao waved her jade hand, smiling. Mandala's delicate brow twitched slightly as she glanced at Mu Chun, but she didn't say anything. Mu Chun was also taken aback for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. The scene before him reminded him of Lin Jing, whom he had met in Shang Continent. She was the little princess of the martial realm, her status not lower than Kai Xiao's. She had also extended an invitation to him, but he had ultimately rejected it. So, his reason for rejection hadn't changed. What he needed wasn't protection. As for Mu Chun's refusal, Kai Xiao, instead of being surprised, only looked at him with even more admiration in her eyes. She smiled at him and said, "I understand. I'm looking forward to our next meeting. I'm curious to see what level you'll have reached by then." Once she finished speaking, she didn't linger, simply waving her hand before gracefully turning and disappearing into the horizon like a flash of light. Mu Chen watched Kai Zhao's departing figure, his hand unconsciously tightening into a fist. If they met again next time, he couldn't rely on her help. His cultivation had only just begun. As Kai Zhao left, countless gazes from all over the Dragon and Phoenix mountain range, still filled with lingering awe, finally withdrew. Seeing that everything in the world had settled down, they no longer stayed and quickly left, each carrying a deep sense of shock. However, it wouldn't be long before the events that took place in Dragon Phoenix Heaven and the surrounding areas spread like a storm across the entire northern domain. And the previously unknown Mu Chen would undoubtedly become the most talked about dark horse among the younger generation of the northern domain. Mu Chen exhaled lightly as he watched the figures disappearing across the vast sky. The journey to Dragon Phoenix Heaven was finally over. "You actually turned down an invitation from the Boundless Fire Domain." At the moment Mu Chen was letting out a sigh of relief, Mandala's surprised voice came from beside him. She seemed a little shocked by Mu Chen's refusal of Kai Zhao's invitation. After all, no matter how one looked at it, the Boundless Fire Domain was a giant that far surpassed the Great Luo Heaven Domain. If I tell you that before coming to the Great Luo Heaven Domain, I also turned down an invitation from the Martial Realm, would you be even more surprised? Mu Chen said with a smile. Mandala's golden eyes widened slightly. If an ordinary person with only the strength of a third-grade supreme said such a thing, she would probably just laugh it off. However, Mu Chen's words made her believe without question, and it left her slightly baffled. She knew well that neither the Boundless Fire Domain nor the Martial Realm would casually extend invitations to just anyone, yet Mu Chen had received such offers despite what seemed like shallow strength. Even she found it hard to believe. The Boundless Fire Domain and the Martial Realm are indeed enormous, and carrying their name might make my cultivation path smoother. But that's not what I need, Mu Chen said, noticing Mandala's astonished expression and smiling lightly. Mandala fell silent for a moment after hearing his words. Then, looking at him with rare admiration, she said, "Now I slightly understand why you were chosen as the master of the Great Sun indestructible body." Mu Chen grinned. To have someone like Mandala say such a thing made him feel a slight sense of vanity. "Let's go. Come back to the Great Luo Heaven Domain with me. You've done very well this time, bringing great honor to our domain. 9 Nether and the others are waiting for you to return and hold a victory feast in your honor," Mandala said with a smile. Then, her voice paused for a moment before continuing. "After we return, the King's sealing ceremony of the Great Luo Heaven Domain will begin. I need you to become the 10th king of our domain during the ceremony." Mu Chen froze. He stared at Mandala in surprise, and complex emotions surged within him. When he first arrived in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, the domain's kings had seemed almost untouchable to him. Yet now, he was able to stand on equal footing with them. Although Mu Chen didn't particularly care about the title of king, it did represent the fruits of his nearly year-long efforts. "But my strength is only at the 3rd grade supreme level. Wouldn't becoming a king be problematic?" Mu Chen asked, his brows furrowed. He didn't feel overjoyed by Mandala's invitation, but rather remained calm, sensing the gravity of the situation. Mandala raised an eyebrow. She had come to understand Mu Chen's calm nature by now, so she wasn't surprised by his sharpness. She nodded and said, "Becoming a king in our Great Luo Heaven Domain is a significant matter. Our domain is vast, with many factions under our banner. Just the number of city lords is close to 1,000, and most of them have contributed greatly to the domain." As for the so-called 10th king, he didn't take it too seriously. Perhaps in his eyes, the only benefit of becoming the 10th king was that it would bring some fame to the 9 Nether Palace, but its actual significance was minimal. "No," Mandala said faintly. Mu Chen awkwardly scratched his nose, thinking he might have offended Mandala's dignity. After all, no matter how it was viewed, she was the undisputed ruler of the Great Luo Heaven Domain. This time in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, if it weren't for your appearance, the 2 most qualified to be crowned king are, Mandala said calmly. The first is Qin Zhong, the lord of Tian Luo City, the largest city in our great Luo heaven domain. Tian Luo City, Qin Zhong, Mu Chen muttered. The name wasn't unfamiliar to him. He had already heard of Qin Zhong from the mouth of the Netherworld Prince. Qin Zhong had been in the great Luo heaven domain for many years, his reputation almost on par with the Nine Kings. However, his strength had never broken through to the 5th grade supreme, which was why he hadn't been crowned king yet. And the other person is Qiu Taiyin, the sect master of the Ghostine sect. Qiu Taiyin. Mu Chen frowned. This was another person with a high reputation in the great Luo heaven domain. He had opened up vast territories for the domain. If it were those two, they both seem more qualified than me. Mu Chen said honestly. Although his fame had risen rapidly since he arrived in the great Luo heaven domain over the past year, his experience was still far behind these two. If he were crowned king, it would likely cause a lot of trouble. Qin Zhong is loyal to our great Luo heaven domain. If he were crowned king, I could accept it. Mandala's golden eyes seemed to flash with a cold glint. But although Qiu Taiyin has some ability, his ambitions are vast. From the intelligence I've gathered, he seems to have some dealings with the Xiantian Palace in secret. Mu Chen was instantly shocked. Such information was clearly beyond his reach with his status in the great Luo heaven domain. However, this information isn't entirely accurate. Plus, Qiu Taiyin has made great contributions over the years. If I act without distinguishing right from wrong, it would be hard not to alienate people. Mandala said lightly. If it were any other time, I could slowly investigate him, but now time is running out. Mu Chen frowned. Is it because of the Grand Hunting War? Mandala nodded. Before the Grand Hunting War begins, all 10 kings must gather, but I absolutely cannot allow someone with hidden intentions to become our great Luo heaven domain's 10th king. This kind of hidden danger must not be left unchecked. You mean? Mu Chen pondered. At the king sealing ceremony, Qiu Taiyin will undoubtedly request to be crowned king. I'll have Qin Zhong stop him. If Qin Zhong succeeds, everything will proceed as usual, but if Qin Zhong fails, Mandala's golden eyes turn to Mu Chen. Then you will have to step in and seize the position of 10th king. Mu Chen grinned awkwardly. I knew there was no easy task coming my way. This is no simple job. Although Mu Chen had never met Qiu Taiyin, someone who could have such a high reputation in the great Luo heaven domain was certainly no pushover. Based on Mu Chen's guess, his strength was likely not inferior to that of the Netherworld Prince. If a confrontation broke out, Mu Chen himself wouldn't even dare say he would win. Don't worry. If you complete the task, you can ask for anything. I'll make sure to fulfill it, Mandala said with a smile. Really? Mu Chen couldn't help but ask in return. Mandala nodded, but seeing the slight curve of Mu Chen's lips, she sensed something was off. Mu Chen noticed this and immediately dropped all pretense. He clenched his hand, and a jade slip appeared in his palm, which he handed to Mandala. If I complete the task, you'll help me gather these items. Mandala took the jade slip with some confusion. Her golden eyes glanced over it, and her face stiffened as she saw the glowing text on the jade slip. 10 drops of ancient 9-headed serpent essence blood. 10 drops of sky-swallowing sparrow essence blood. 10 drops of void beast essence blood. The jade slip listed nearly 10 kinds of divine beast essence blood, all of which had a great reputation in the world, and their essence blood was extremely rare and expensive. What do you need so much divine beast essence blood for? Mandala gritted her silver teeth. It has its own uses, Mu Chen shrugged. The 10 types of divine beast essence blood were essential for cultivating the Dragon Phoenix scripture. When he first discovered them, he was nearly overwhelmed, knowing that with his abilities, gathering these rare essence bloods would be incredibly difficult. But luckily, Mandala had spoken up, saving him a huge amount of trouble. So how is it? Can you get them? Mu Chen asked, his smile widening as he looked at Mandala's stiff face. Mandala shot him a resentful glare. You were already planning to take advantage of me, weren't you? With Mu Chen's cleverness, he probably already had plans to extort her when she mentioned the king's sealing ceremony. The awkwardness from earlier now seemed like a bit of an act. Mu Chen chuckled awkwardly in response. As long as you manage to take the 10th king position, I'll let you gain some benefits, Mandala said with a cold snort. Although I can't gather them in the great Luo heaven domain, I'll collect them at every auction in the entire northern domain for you." She then looked at Mu Chen with a dangerous glint in her eyes. "But if you fail, don't blame me." After her words, she didn't say more, turning and vanishing into a streak of light. Mu Chen shivered under her final gaze, shaking his head helplessly. His journey in Dragon Phoenix Heaven had just ended, and now she was giving him another task with the King's sealing ceremony. "Hopefully, Lord Qinzhong can deal with Qiu Taiyin," Mu Chen muttered, then quickly followed her. Chapter 814, News of Luo Li. When Mu Chen returned to the great Luo Heaven domain, as expected, a grand celebration awaited him. It seemed the entire domain had learned of his achievements in Dragon Phoenix Heaven through a special means. These accomplishments were enough to significantly raise the prestige of the great Luo Heaven domain. Over the years, although the great Luo Heaven domain was one of the top forces in the northern domain, it had always ranked at the bottom among the younger generation compared to other top powers. The incident where their young genius was killed by a talented genius from the Netherworld Palace when entering Dragon Phoenix Heaven had humiliated the great Luo Heaven domain even further. This had caused them to miss the openings of Dragon Phoenix Heaven in the past years, until now. When Mandala first announced that Mu Chen would represent the great Luo Heaven domain to participate again in Dragon Phoenix Heaven, many high-ranking officials had reservations, though they didn't express them outright. While Mu Chen's abilities had shown potential, it was still a far cry from the top geniuses on the Northern Domain's Dragon Phoenix record. So, at the beginning, aside from a few people, not many had high hopes for Mu Chen's participation. Some even thought it would just be an embarrassment. But despite others' thoughts, Mu Chen managed to break into Dragon Phoenix Heaven all on his own. In the end, the entire Great Luo Heaven domain received shocking news. Mu Chen defeated Liu Yan, battled the Netherworld Prince, and ultimately ascended the 10th step of the Dragon Phoenix ladder, a feat no one had ever accomplished. He successfully obtained the most valuable inheritance in Dragon Phoenix Heaven. The name Mu Chen from the Great Luo Heaven domain overshadowed countless other renowned young geniuses. The entire Great Luo Heaven domain erupted with excitement. Those high-ranking officials who had once doubted him were now speechless. Though still in disbelief, they had no choice but to admit that this young man, whom they had once disregarded, was now rising like a comet in the northern domain. It might not be long before he becomes a prominent figure in the entire region. At the celebration, the people from the Nine Nether Palace were undoubtedly the most excited and proud. Mu Chen had come to the Nine Nether Palace with them and was also their leader. His outstanding performance made the Nine Nether Palace feel vindicated after being suppressed for so long. From now on, no one in the Great Luo Heaven domain would dare to look down on the Nine Nether Palace. The celebration lasted for 2 full days, and the excitement gradually faded from the Great Luo Heaven domain. Mu Chen finally managed to escape the overwhelming attention and return to the Nine Nether Palace to recuperate. To him, this celebration was even more exhausting and troublesome than the battles in Dragon Phoenix Heaven. Nine Nether Palace. Mu Chen lay lazily on top of the Nine Nether Palace, his arms resting behind his head. He gazed drowsily at the bright moon on the horizon, a cool breeze brushing past, slowly relaxing his long tensed body. The bloodstained scent that had tainted Dragon Phoenix Heaven seemed to gradually dissipate in this moment. Mu Chen's eyes focused on the moon, and his mind involuntarily flashed to the image of a woman with long hair that shimmered like a galaxy. Her cold, delicate face, as if carved from stone, was deeply engraved in Mu Chen's soul, stirring his heart. That was Luo Li. "I wonder how you're doing in the Luo God clan," Mu Chen muttered to himself. Since their separation, he had plunged headfirst into the perilous Great Thousand World, enduring bloody battles and constantly walking between life and death. All he sought was to one day, as he had promised that girl, become a peerless powerhouse. Then, he would stand before her, as if in the spirit road, a knight guarding his princess, cutting through all obstacles for her. And his mother, the 2 most important women in his life, were the driving force behind his journey. No matter how difficult the path to becoming a peerless powerhouse might be, he would never retreat. Because, to protect, one needs power. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed slightly, and his hand clenched slowly into a fist. "You sure seem relaxed," A voice laughed, and Mu Chen opened his eyes to see Xun'er standing nearby, a smile playing on her lips. Moonlight illuminated her form, outlining her seductive curves. Mu Chen lazily curled his lips in response. "I have 2 pieces of news that I think will interest you," Xun'er said, gracefully sitting next to him. Her curvaceous body stirred a certain restlessness, and her faint fragrance made one's heart race. "First, I've gathered detailed information about Qin Zhong and Qiu Taiyin," Xun'er continued with a smile. She was close to Mu Chen, so she naturally knew about Mandala's plan for him to seize the 10th king's position. Mu Chen merely lifted his eyelids lazily upon hearing this, clearly uninterested in the news. Not at all upset, Xun'er continued with a grin. "The second piece of news seems to have come from the Western Heaven Realm." Western Heaven Realm. Mu Chen froze for a moment, then abruptly sat up, his gaze filled with excitement as he looked at Xun'er. He knew that the Luo God clan was in the Western Heaven Realm, and if Xun'er was telling him this, it had to do with Luo Li. The Western Heaven Realm is extremely far from Tianluo continent. Without special channels, news like this is almost impossible to reach. "I had to pay a price to obtain it," Xun'er said, looking at him with a playful gleam in her eyes. "So, are you interested?" Mu Chen rubbed his nose and gave a dry laugh. Seeing this, Xun'er stopped teasing him, and, after a brief pause, said, "The intel says that after Luo Li returned to the Luo God clan, it seems that the Blood God clan from the Western Heaven Realm accelerated their offensive. The 2 clans have clashed countless times, rivers of blood flowing, with casualties mounting. And your little girlfriend is indeed impressive. It's said that after she returned to the Luo God clan, she didn't remain with the royal family but instead led an elite force to guard the borders, fighting the Blood God clan army in repeated battles," Xun'er added, her tone filled with admiration. But upon hearing this, Mu Chen's expression changed. The combined strength of the Luo God clan and the Blood God clan was on par with that of the great Luo Heaven Domain. Such battles would certainly draw in powerful figures, and even a supreme powerhouse might not be enough. For Luo Li to personally lead such a force meant she was heading into the most dangerous situations. "She's done the right thing," Mu Chen murmured. Xun'er glanced at him before speaking softly. "It's said that the royal family within the Luo God clan is also in chaos, only held together by the presence of Luo Tianshun. Although Luo Li holds a prestigious status, she is still young. By personally leading her forces to face the enemy, she not only hones her own skills but boosts the morale of the Luo God clan. It also enhances her position within the clan, winning the support of more elders and tribespeople." And as it turns out, she was right. Over the past year, as she led the Luo God clan's elite forces in repelling the Blood God clan's attacks, her influence in the Luo God clan has grown significantly. Particularly among the younger generation of strong warriors, almost all of them have rallied behind her. Mu Chen listened to the words of the Xun'er, and the surprise in his eyes slowly began to fade. He looked up at the bright full moon, then took a deep breath of the cool air, his eyes gradually closing. It seemed as though he could hear the sounds of fierce battles resounding through heaven and earth. Waves of light and shadows swept in from both sides of the sky and earth, eventually crashing into each other with a deafening roar. Blood and spiritual energy erupted at the same time, shaking the entire world. The entire realm trembled. On the battlefield's hill, a young girl wielded a long sword, the blood-red wind lifting her long hair, which shimmered like the Milky Way. Her eyes, as clear as glass, reflected the sea of corpses and blood. Amidst this blood-drenched world filled with slaughter, her frail body appeared all the more fragile. Mu Chen's closed eyes opened again, and the sight before him caused a slight pain in his heart. It turned out that when he charged into this vast world, Luo Li, who had returned to the Luo God clan, was also facing an unsettled situation. The dangers she encountered and the pressure she had to bear far exceeded his own. While he fought life-and-death battles, perhaps Luo Li was also leading a massive army, engaging in earth-shaking wars against the Blood God clan. She perhaps understood him well. She knew that, for the sake of that promise, Mu Chen, with his stubborn nature, would never retreat, no matter how perilous the situation. So, she too struggled, hoping that by doing so, she could lighten his burden. She was not the type of girl who liked to stay quietly in one place, watching Mu Chen fight to become a peerless powerhouse, getting injured in the process, while she could only stand far away, feeling heartache. Yet, by doing so, she too caused Mu Chen to feel a slight pain in his heart. "I'm still not strong enough," Mu Chen murmured. When he thought he had worked hard enough, he forgot that far away, there was a girl who was also working desperately, so that he would not have to work so hard. "Don't worry, Luo Li. My promise, I will definitely fulfill it." Mu Chen's hand clenched suddenly. An unstoppable sharpness surged from his dark eyes. The previous lethargy that had enveloped him vanished completely. He needed to grow stronger. Nine Nether watched as Mu Chen's aura suddenly shifted and smiled slightly, thinking to himself, "Mu Chen, one day, you will truly become that peerless powerhouse. I've always believed in you. Give me the information on those two guys. I'm very interested in them now," Mu Chen said with a smile, extending his hand. It seemed that, in order to make Mandala gather the 10 divine beast essence bloods he needed, he could not give up the position of the 10th king for the girl who was working so hard. In the next 10 days or so, Mu Chen did not leave Nine Nether Palace. He shut out all external disturbances and entered the cultivation room to focus on his closed-door training. After learning some news about Luo Li, it was clear that he now understood that, compared to the girl who was also working hard, his self-perceived efforts and progress were far from enough. There was still a vast distance between the promise he made to the girl and where he stood now. Therefore, this was not the time for him to relax or be complacent. He needed to become stronger. While Mu Chen focused on his training in seclusion, news of him began to spread across the northern domain, stirring quite a commotion. After all, it had been many years since the Dragon Phoenix Heaven was opened, and someone was finally able to pass the 10th step of the Dragon Phoenix ladder. How could this not astonish the countless strong cultivators of the northern domain? Especially when they learned that Mu Chen was only a 3rd grade supreme, and that he had created shocking feats such as defeating Lu Yin and intercepting the Netherworld Prince. Their astonishment grew even stronger. Every time the Dragon Phoenix Heaven was opened, the Dragon Phoenix record, which was associated with it, would undergo significant changes, and this time was no exception. Undoubtedly, Mu Chen, the Dark Horse, was the most eye-catching figure. Whether it was defeating Lu Yin, battling the Netherworld Prince, or achieving the remarkable feat of reaching the 10th step of the Dragon Phoenix ladder, all of these were enough to make his name spread across the younger generation of the Northern Domain. As a result, after countless strong cultivators gave their candid evaluations, Mu Chen's name replaced Lu Yin, who had originally ranked 3rd on the Dragon Phoenix record, surpassing other established young powerhouses like Su Biyue and Hong Yu. Above Mu Chen, the rankings remained unchanged, with the Netherworld Prince and Fong Yi still occupying the top spots. The strength these two had shown was indeed overwhelming, even to Mu Chen, who had recently shone brightly. As for Kai Xiao, who shone the brightest during the Dragon Phoenix Heaven, she was like a figure from a myth. After the Dragon Phoenix Heaven event, she elegantly left the Northern Domain, leaving behind a stunning silhouette that captivated the world. Since she was not from the Northern Domain, her name did not appear in the Dragon Phoenix record, but it was clear that no young powerhouse who participated in the Dragon Phoenix Heaven would ever forget her. The girl, possessing a mesmerizing beauty that could enchant all beings, carried herself like a queen high above, so much so that even top talents like Fong Yi and the Netherworld Prince could only look up to her from a distance, unable to reach her level. Her revealed identity during the Dragon Phoenix mountain range shook the Northern Domain's most powerful factions. The fact that she was the daughter of the Flame Emperor was a revelation that even the mighty Divine Hall, with its deep roots in the Northern Domain, dared not take lightly. Only at their level did they truly understand the overwhelming influence of the boundless Fire Domain and the Flame Emperor in this vast world. After the event, even the Divine Hall and Netherworld Palace must have had lingering fears. Fortunately, Kai Xiao triumphed over Fong Yi and the Netherworld Prince. Otherwise, if she had been defeated and gravely injured, the wrath of the boundless Fire Domain would have been catastrophic. Beyond this, these top factions in the Northern Domain felt a sense of frustration. They had always stood at the pinnacle within their domain, but now they were worried about harming someone else and provoking disastrous retaliation. But this wasn't their fault. It could only be said that the boundless fire domain, a massive and terrifying force, was simply too fearsome. While the excitement over Mu Chun ranking third in the Dragon Phoenix record gradually faded, a new, even more captivating event began to take center stage, the King's Sealing Ceremony. To the many powerhouses of the Great Luo Heaven domain, this event was clearly far more enticing than the Dragon Phoenix Heaven. The King's Sealing Ceremony was directly related to their own interests and had far-reaching implications. The Great Luo Heaven domain was vast and filled with powerful beings, but its hierarchy was strict. The domain lords ruled the entire domain, with the 3 sovereigns, 9 kings, various leaders, city lords, and subordinate forces beneath them. The higher one's rank in the Great Luo Heaven domain, the greater the resources and status they enjoyed. The 3 sovereigns were exceptionally powerful, each of them needing to possess at least the strength of a 7th grade supreme to be called a sovereign. As a result, very few people in the Great Luo Heaven domain could ever reach this level. The king-level status was similarly coveted, as becoming a king meant the right to form one's own army. Not only could one receive substantial amounts of supreme spiritual liquid each year from the Great Luo Heaven domain, but they also gained the authority to allocate cities. In times of war, the share of spoils they had to pay to the domain was significantly smaller than that of city lords or subordinate forces. Thus, many powerhouses in the Great Luo Heaven domain were envious of the king-level status. However, according to the rules, one needed to have the strength to challenge the 5th grade supreme in order to become a king. Of course, there were exceptions, like the 9 Nether, who had the powerful 9 Nether Sparrow clan backing her. Even the Mandala, wary of such an ancient divine beast race, had to make an exception for her. For other powerhouses, though, there was no such privilege. They had to rely solely on their own strength to compete for the position. The King's Sealing Ceremony was held when someone was crowned king, which only emphasized how significant this event was in the Great Luo Heaven domain. While people in the Northern domain were still shocked by Mu Chen's ranking in the Dragon Phoenix record, all the powerhouses in the Great Luo Heaven domain began turning their attention to the upcoming King's Sealing Ceremony. Once they became a king, their status in the Great Luo Heaven domain would skyrocket. With countless powerhouses eagerly awaiting, the Grand King's Sealing Ceremony finally arrived. Whoosh, whoosh. Today, the Great Luo Heaven was undoubtedly the most bustling place of the year. The skies were filled with dazzling light and shadow, sweeping in from the horizon and falling upon the Great Luo Heaven like a swarm of locusts. At such a time, the guards of the Great Luo Heaven became increasingly vigilant, with the armies of the kings joining forces to maintain order and prevent chaos during this grand event. Any disorder would be a blow to the Great Luo Heaven domain's reputation. From the grandiose spectacle, it was clear that the King's Sealing Ceremony was indeed the most popular event in the Great Luo Heaven domain, drawing the interest of every powerhouse. 9 Nether Palace. Outside the cultivation room, 2 graceful figures stood. In front was the slender and alluring figure of 9 Nether, and behind her was Tang Bing, dressed in tight black clothing, her figure appearing delicate and refined. At this moment, Tang Bing was gazing with furrowed brows at the still-closed cultivation room and said, "The King's Sealing Ceremony is about to start, yet this guy is still not out." 9 Nether smiled slowly and replied, "Everything needs to be prepared properly. After all, claiming the 10th king title is no easy feat. Humph. I had to squeeze out over 200,000 supreme spiritual liquids for him this time. If he fails, I'll make sure he compensates every single drop," Tang Bing said with a hint of pity in her voice. She was the grand manager of 9 Nether Palace, in charge of all supreme spiritual liquids. For Mu Chen's seclusion, 9 Nether had allocated 200,000 supreme spiritual liquids from the palace's resources, which all had to go through Tang Bing's hands to be dispensed. "Such a little miser," 9 Nether teased with a smile, then gently caressed Tang Bing's delicate face. "You could also invest yourself, and perhaps get even greater returns." "Sister." Tang Bing's face turned crimson, embarrassed, and angry. She was usually known for her cold demeanor in 9 Nether Palace, commanding much respect. So this rare display of a shy, flustered side was quite a sight to behold. "Who wants to invest in me?" At that moment, The closed cultivation room suddenly opened, and a voice full of laughter came from inside. Mu Chen stepped out, smiling as he looked at the two beautiful women. Seeing Mu Chen emerge, Tang Bing's face reddened even more. She then scanned him with her bright eyes, her eyebrows immediately furrowing in displeasure. You didn't break through? At that moment, although Mu Chen's spiritual energy had grown more refined than before his seclusion, he was still at the 3rd grade supreme level. He had not broken through to the 4th grade supreme, as Tang Bing had expected. Mu Chen, slightly amused but also helpless, said, "What do you take me for? Do you think one seclusion is enough to break through?" Tang Bing's face flushed slightly, and she muttered, "So much supreme spiritual liquid. What a waste." Mu Chen rolled his eyes in response. Nine Nether walked around Mu Chen, her eyes flickering with subtle wisdom. Unlike Tang Bing, she was able to sense that Mu Chen's spiritual energy was at an exceptionally abundant level, and it seemed as though he was deliberately suppressing something within. "It seems your seclusion went well," Nine Nether said with a faint smile. Mu Chen also smiled, but didn't say much. He stretched lazily and looked up at the sky outside Nine Nether Palace. He could feel the powerful fluctuations of spiritual energy filling the air. Truly, this is the most grand event in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, Mu Chen remarked with surprise. After being in the Great Luo Heaven Domain for so long, this was the first time he had witnessed so many powerful figures gathered in one place. "Are you ready?" Nine Nether asked, gazing at Mu Chen with a smile. Mu Chen took a deep breath, his expression growing serious. He nodded slowly. This time, whether it was Qin Zhong, the city lord of Tian Luo City, or Qiu Taiyin, the sect leader of the Ghostine sect, their strength would likely rival that of the Netherworld prince. If he wanted to claim the 10th king title, it was clear that a brutal battle awaited him. But no matter what, there was no way he would back down. Mu Chen lifted his head. The image of a young woman flashed through his mind. He clenched his fist and stepped forward. "Let's go."